We have thousands and thousands of hours of television, radio, internet, mass media productions on coronavirus. And in my personal opinion, all of that stuff can be reduced to less than 60 seconds of actual usable information based on some kind of verifiable facts. And the reason is no actual science being performed yet on this stuff because it takes a while to study these things. Basically, all we know that it's a coronavirus. There are dozens of them that are known to virologists, and all of this that came from animals potentially can infect humans. And they do. And they have been for decades that we knew about them, and of course forever before we knew about them. Now, of all these known coronaviruses that have been somewhat studied to one or the other degree, it's known that they are been generally are flu-like. They're respiratory viruses, which means they travel within the capillaries of water that come from mouth, and they tend to land within a couple meters from the host person. And if in that period of time they will be contracted by some other person, they may, depending on how virulent this particular strain is, on how susceptible that particular whole new host potential would be, they may invade their cells that line their air pathways, okay? And as these cells get infected and virus begins to introduce itself into the cell machinery of that new host and make copies, depending on how susceptible that particular person is, the virus may proliferate in other layers of cells deeper, okay? Now, that's basically the second stage, how susceptible that person is. And just like with any other virus, any other flu, for example, or any other cold virus, because any other flu and any other cold virus is caused by dozens of different viruses, which are kind of known too. I mean, the virologists know, they give them some name, they know how to identify them. Some of them are studied a little bit more, and they know a little bit other details about their nature of those viruses. Some are less studied. There is no real money in virology, unfortunately, around the world, and it's not very commercially interesting industry, so to speak, because except vaccines, which are heavily commercialized and heavily advertised, but nobody really needs to take them except for maybe some standard vaccinations, which against some very well-known old and deadly viruses like chickenpox and maybe a few other that are not really common anymore, but they're from the old days when before the vaccination were invented. So because there are no drugs that can be made against viruses, not like antibiotics against bacteria, viruses, because they are not really a living entity. They don't have their own physiology. They don't have anything that can be disrupted, any process, because they don't really have any activity until they get introduced inside the host cell and begin to replicate, and that's basically all they do. They cannot really be attacked. They can be attacked by certain chemicals, but you don't want to drink those chemicals to get them inside your system anyway. So all viruses can be treated with is if you can develop a very specific antibody. And the way antibodies work, they are very specific to some protein on the surface of that bacterial envelope. They get attached, and then once antibody attaches to that envelope, it's stuck to it and it travels with the virus, and it sort of sells a beacon homing signal to the host person who is infected with this virus, their immune cells like macrophages that will receive that signal and zone in on that antibody and then just basically eat up that viral particle. And that's how viruses get cured. But other than that, there is no other real drug. Okay. And then the way vaccination works, it basically helps body to develop those antibodies before you actually contract the real disease. So if you get, you're already conditioned, and your immune response will be faster and will not give the virus time to actually proliferate and hurt your body to a larger degree. So, but if people are, and because this, for example, all these flu-like viruses, which coronavirus is part of them, cold-like, flu-like viruses, they tend to attack first because they travel by the respiratory capillaries, bodies, those little bubbles of water that come from person's mouth when you speak, when you cough, when you sneeze, whatever. They tend to land on your air pathways, like within the nostrils, within the mouth, within the throat, so to speak, and attack those cells first. Now, smokers will be more susceptible because those layers of their air pathways are less functional. Okay, they're drier generally, which means their immunity response is slower there, so these viral cells will penetrate easier into smokers' lining cells than non-smokers. And of course, smokers and heavy smokers who did it for long period of time, they have developed other things that go along with all of that. Okay, so they have probably some heart problems, they have other immune issues, they have weakened organs, they have not as good vascular system, not as good blood quality. Okay, the solution that runs within their cells is not as healthy as healthy people. And of course, on top of it, if you add alcoholics, or not even alcohol, but people who drink frequently, all that adds to weakening your immune system. Not to mention that on top of it, you can have just an older person who is already has all these processes weakened and diminished and more susceptible. And then you may have other genetic predispositions. You may have other diseases that are just generally affecting you and weaken your immune system and make your body weaker to respond to new viral infection. So all that adds up, and eventually certain people get a heavier form of this infection. But that's not because it's this infection, it's because it's any flu, like any cold virus, will hit those people harder, right? Because they're more susceptible. The only thing that this virus is a little bit newer. It's a new mutation, so there is very little immunity that you already have. Compare, let's say, to like a seasonal flu or seasonal cold viruses, which are circulating year by year and in human population, and people have already all contracted one form or the other throughout their life. So you generally have some immunity because they're very similar viruses, and your antibodies can still get attached to them. Maybe better, maybe worse, depends on the year and type of mutation, but they will be able to attach better or worse to them. And it just depends. Some of them will be a little bit faster, some of them will be a little bit slower year to year. And that will help you to subdue this infection faster, or it will take a little bit on a heavier form and will take extra effort from your body to defeat it. But this one is a newer one, so you have very little immunity against it and very little matching antibodies, and so that's why it adds to a little bit of heavier form, especially for those more susceptible people who have all these other things that go against their healthy body and organism, and to be able to have that response that is faster and a little bit more consolidated, like in a healthy individual. So it will take a little bit of time to develop this, but you know, we had all this SARS, SMARS, VARS, pigs, whatever we had. I mean, they didn't disappear after the television stopped talking about it, you know. They're still here. They just became part of our seasonal flu viruses. Some people, the thing is that if you test anybody, you take thousands of people in Los Angeles, for example, and you test them, you will find, for like different types of viruses, you'll find that they have different types of flu, different type of cold in that test. But it doesn't mean that these people are sick, because they don't really have symptoms of disease. They just have some lingering viral particles still circling inside their body. And that's what we find with this coronavirus. You test random people, which you usually don't do specifically for something. You find it there, but doesn't mean much. It doesn't mean this people are, because it's not Ebola, or it's not like some really deadly virus, which we are, well, we're talking about like 70, 80, 90% kill rate, you know, if you get infected by it. Again, this virus is basically a flu virus, okay? It has a little bit higher percentage kill rate now and again, it kills susceptible people, not healthy individuals, susceptible people, older, smokers, drinkers, some other condition that come from other things in your life, or just genetically predisposition to have a weak immune system. And it's new, so it has a little bit more room to attack you and proliferate before immunity starts to build up against it. And so you have slightly higher effectiveness of this virus because it's so new, but it's slightly higher. It's not really higher, okay? It's not 40, 50, 60% kill rate, or 20 even percent, 30%, that will be really causing like a population crisis in the countries which are infected, okay? And then it will level out very quickly and starts to become and turn into regular flu virus, which comes the following years will be within the population. Nobody will even pay attention. Like right now, nobody pays attention that people get sick with the flu. Nobody tests anybody. Nobody even knows which flu you have. Nobody even cares. And that's the same situation here. It's what psychologists call you are aware of things you pay attention to. Okay, until somebody tells you that you have coronavirus, you think you have regular flu and you just go on. Nobody cares. You go on to work, you get infected other people start getting sick, infect other people, and you have a flu epidemic. Nobody cares. Things just go on. Some people die. That's normal, people say. But this one, it's new, so it's more attention. But that's normal human response. There's nothing new with it. So the thing is, the governments cause panic because they don't want to be blamed, because it's a attention game right now, and it's easy to see for those government officials in different countries, because the heightened attention span for this particular situation, that they can get blamed if something happens. But it happens anyway with other diseases. There are millions of people who die of all kinds of viruses in the same countries, in the same China, in the same, Europe, in the same North America, anywhere. Millions of people die from all different types of viruses every year, and nobody cares. There is no panic. Nobody gets sued, nobody gets complained. Politicians don't get hard time or thrown out of office or voted out, whatever, because the thinking is, oh well, what are you gonna do, right? It's just a virus. So, well, this is just a virus too, and that's all there is to it. Thanks.